Hello to you all, and welcome to another episode of Made of Things. This episode goes out to my dad, and prayers for him because he's now in the hospital spending the night, and we're worried over him, but apparently he's okay now and being in control. Just some heart complications, and man, it's been a rough year. Guys, on the show this week we have Mark Gardner from the band Ride. But before I get to that, I'm finally going to tell you the story I've been promising for a while. Alright, so as you might know, I traveled to Brighton a month or so ago to attend the King Crimson show and interview Pat Mastelotto, one of their drummers and a longtime drummer now. And so I also went to Brighton to go on vacation, which was fantastic and very necessary, and also to hang out with my friends living over there. So what I didn't tell you was that I also had the chance to attend more shows, which is something quite common in the UK. And one of the shows I wanted to attend was by the gold standard of British stand-up comedy, that is, Stuart Lee. So, Stuart was doing an unusually small show in Brighton at this place called Sticky Mike's Frog Bar for an attendance of about 100 people. Now, if you're from the UK or a very big comedy fan, you might be perfectly aware of who Stuart Lee is. Maybe you've heard Mark Maron talk to him and about him a lot over at the WTF podcast. But he's a big name in the UK and has been recently playing only crowds upwards of 700 people, more or less. Obviously, more or less, never exactly 700 people. Which is, quite a lot of people for a stand-up show, and not that many for sports. But even for rock music, it's not that shabby of an amount. So naturally, tickets for 100 capacity person show crowd, loose words, tickets sold out in about 6 minutes, which meant that there was no way to make sure that I was going to be attending this show. In fact, I had already had my heart broken from not being able to attend the Mark Maron stand-up show in London, because he played about 2 hours before my flight arrived on that exact same night, and the show was announced only a few weeks in advance. So obviously I had already booked my flight, and so I missed Mark's show, and I might not get the chance to ever see Mark's show again. And I was thinking the same could happen with the Stuart Lee show. What you should realize here is that important international comedians never really come to Portugal. Many people don't speak the English language over here at such an advanced level that is. Most people have basic English skills, but to understand comedy, it really has to, you need to be going a little further. But, maybe, international comedians coming to Portugal may become common practice in the future. But as we are in the moment, nothing of the sort is happening over here. So you either have to really travel or, live abroad in order to go to comedy shows with, the sort of names I'm talking about. And in Portugal, we only get Portuguese comedians, really. Even that alone has only been going on for about a decade only. So, yeah, going to those shows was pretty important to me. So my friends were already going to the show, and I decided to tag along anyway, because there might be some leftover tickets from people who couldn't make it in the end. There you go. My lucky self found a way to buy a ticket and attend the show via the means of being patient and going the extra mile. Not only that, as I got a third row seat right in the center, so, I was pretty close to the stage. Stuart Lee goes on and starts being even more hilarious than I had, fathomed or imagined in any way. This is a person who's really matured his comedy style and skills and is probably at his all-time best. Even though many of you might disagree, I don't really care. Stuart did about 2 hours in the end, and as tradition in stand-up goes, there was some crowd work. Crowd work is basically comedians talking to the crowd, and there's some interaction in terms of people being able to improvise on the spot and being funny in relation to what people in the crowd are saying. And, some people in the crowds are informed and really go for that, sometimes even going too far. And one woman in the front seat kept talking during his set, like interjecting, and doing things like taking pictures and, up to the point of it almost not being acceptable. Now, I know of Stuart Lee and his persona, and I also know that it is common sense and decency, really, not to be taking pictures during a show. Guys, I'll tell you why this is disrespectful. It is disrespectful because while you're taking pictures, be it of a comedy show or of a rock show or of a show of any kind, for the moment you're taking a picture, you're actually paying more attention to yourself than to the show. And you're actually not listening. Kind of like when you're way less dangerous than this, but kind of like when you're texting while driving. You're not really driving. So the way shows work is that you, if you don't know, you try to pay attention so that the memories you have of the show you're watching and or listening to are the memories in your brain and not something on your phone that you're probably never going to look at again. With all this in mind, and also that Stuart is the sort of guy who hates this picture-taking culture, I became extremely tempted to make an exception for myself. It is unlikely that I am ever going to attend the Stuart Lee show again, and the woman in the front must have been taking dozens of pictures, so I decided to go for it as well. I took about 2 pictures with my phone, but they turned out crappy, so I went for it again. And I must have gone a little too far, because suddenly Stuart stops the show and looks straight at me with a pitbull stance and something very close to hatred in his eyes. So he stared at me and went, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And immediately I wanted him to make sure that I knew I was doing something stupid, and I said, "I apologize, I know, I'll put this away. But he asked me again, "Yes, but what are you doing?" So I replied, "Sorry, Stu, I was just taking a picture because I came from Portugal to see your show." Now, the crowd's reaction was sort of a mix between laughter, cheer, and clapping. Sort of like a "Way!" as British crowds go. So Stuart holds his microphone, looks down and to the side a bit, and goes, "Well, the audience has spoken. Usually I take that away from you, but who am I to tell the audience they're wrong?" So this is a good example of how something that is inherently stupid can turn into something heartwarming and endearing. Stuart clearly understood that this was a big compliment, so he carried on with the show for a few seconds, but then cut to, "Really? Portugal?" "Yep." "Don't you guys eat a lot of sardines over there? Do you eat sardines as well?" "Well, I don't have much of a choice to." This was a reference to an old bit he used to do about going to Portugal and Lisbon and how we eat a lot of sardines during the patron saint's day. I'm not sure he was aware of that. I can't remember. Him saying that back to me was my reward, really, like a little pat on my back for having traveled far to see his show and, doing something stupid, but for sweet purposes, really. I shouldn't have done it, but I don't really regret it now. It was also mentioned, by the way, in the Brighton Review of the show. So if you go online and look for Brighton Review Portugal, you'll find confirmation of this incident. Stuart, I'm talking to you now. Look, man, now I don't really have to look at the pictures to remember the show forever in my head. So to me, you've won, man. There you go. I hope we cross paths some time in the future. I don't know. Okay, now about our guest this week. Mark Gardner is a member of the band Ride, who were one of the forefront names of the whole shoegaze thing in Britain back in the late 90s. They were never the most popular of bands, and surely never got as popular as My Bloody Valentine, but I remember listening to them back in the day, particularly this amazing track called Mousetrap, which I would still advise you to go check out on YouTube or something. Or buy the record. Buy a song for once. And Ride also, became even more popular when guitarist Andy Bell joined Oasis. And, he's also part of Liam Gallagher's BDI. And, that fact certainly called more attention to the excellent band that is Ride. So much like with Slowdive, which is another shoegaze band who also called it quits at some point in the early 2000s or late 90s maybe, Primavera was the main catalyst for their reunion at this point in time. While I was working and hanging out in Barcelona the week before, I got the chance to go up to Mark Gardner and Los Colbert, or Colbert, I don't know, should ask him next time, and talk to them for a bit. And there seems to be some sort of weird myth involving Ride as being a bit difficult or curmudgeon-y. But I have to say, I didn't find that at all. The guys seemed extremely happy, for one, and were very nice, and we even set up an interview for the week afterwards. And, my opinion about meeting people is that it's really very much about how you talk to people, and how you carry yourself, and, what you project onto others. And I'm talking to you directly now, to the listener, saying that you don't have to be that guy. It's on you if you're that guy. But, more on this next week. So before we get to my chat with Mark, I should just point out that I had just ran out of the Dan Deacon episode, so I was a bit winded at first, and also pretty nervous, because this episode with Mark could never have happened because, there were some weird security issues. But Mark had my back, so we ended up recording this before the show at Primavera in Porto. So here is my conversation with Mark Gardner of the excellent Ride. Crazy that you guys went to Barcelona, where we met.
Yeah.
And we went to Barcelona, and then you guys went back to the US. Went to the US and went to Toronto as well.
Yeah.
Right. And then came back. You must be exhausted.
No.
No. Not really.
No, I feel fine. I mean, it's because so I think initially the schedule was a little bit different, similar. I mean, how it was mapped out. We wanted to hit, lots of places at a similar sort of time, but the schedule was okay. But then Primavera Portugal came a little later to say, hey, we want you to. It wasn't, we didn't book the Portugal one at the same time as the Spain one, so we thought that we'd just be going to America, then flying back to England, and then have a day of rest or whatever before we then do Field Day, which is a big headline show for us. But because then Porto came up and we went, well, of course we'd love to do it, but so we slotted it in a hole. But it's fine, we're okay. We upgraded, the band upgraded themselves on the plane, so as soon as we sat on the plane, we popped a sleeping pill and put the beds, we had the sort of, we just slept, so I slept fine. I was pushed this morning, I didn't even know that the plane landed. So I was fine, and then we sort of slept in the bus on the way here from Lisbon.
Oh, sure.
So, but we've all been pretty getting, we're getting fit for this, so I feel okay. Yeah.
What was it like playing Primavera in Barcelona? I saw the show; it was amazing.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Was it amazing for you guys? That's my question.
It was. It wasn't really until afterwards that I realised the scale of it, because I'd walked around a little bit, but not much, and I knew that I'd got some family and friends there who were in the VIP section for the main stage, which is like halfway back, and after the show I went there to meet them, and I was just like, wow, it's huge. And it's like, then I realised like what we'd done in a way. I mean, when I guess in a sense we've got the same crew, we've got the same monitoring system now, so what we try and do from stage to stage is just to feel comfortable with the monitoring and that it's another show. But I realised when we were playing, this is a big show, I could just sort of see a sea of people, but you can't really, it's kind of, you can't really understand it from where you are, you know, until, like I say, until you go out and see it, and it was huge. Yeah, I think it's got to be probably maybe second. I think Reading '92 was probably our biggest show we ever played, but that's probably close to it. Yeah, with the amount of people that were there. There's probably 40,000-50,000 people. I don't really know.
Yeah, probably. Actually, that ties in with something I'd like to ask you, because the time, do you guys remember? Well, it seems that that your sound, it was perfect for that huge, space, and so it seems like you guys have been playing for big crowds for a long time. Have you played any clubs in the past, 20 years?
I mean, individually, of course, Andy's obviously been doing lots of Oasis shows and BDI shows. I also did lots of big shows with Rhinoceros, which maybe a lot of people don't know that, but I was doing guest vocal for those. So we did some big shows, like the headline in Benicassim and stuff. I think with the sound, it's all about having a good crew and a great sound man, and also we've individually been working on our own sounds so that it just is bigger. You know, I mean, this was the challenge. We couldn't come back and be the same as what we were, because when we were doing what we were doing back then, we were generally playing sort of smaller shows and not such big festivals all the time. We did Reading, which is a big festival, of course, and we did Glastonbury. But so we knew that when we came back, we'd have to make this work on a bigger stage. And I think that we've worked hard to do that. You know, the challenge has been to come back, and not just come back and just kind of be like just the same, but not better than it. Well, we had to come back and make it sound bigger and better. So that's what we've been working on doing. Yeah. And
I had the chance to meet you guys at Barcelona. It was lovely. You guys were very pleasant and very nice. And I had the chance to ask this or tell this little story to Lawrence, and I believe I didn't tell you, because when I was a kid, I bought Tarantula, and I also had Going Blank Again. But the Tarantula album, the back of the CD, you know, the inlet thing, I don't know, the thingy. I also had it said Ride Tarantula, obviously, but then I also had another CD, for the first one by the Cardigans, much more or less around the same year, like 96 or 97 or something. And for some reason the distribution in Portugal was they made a mistake, and the Cardigans album also had the Ride Tarantula thing inlet. So the description on the side, when I organized my CDs vertically, I had two Tarantulas by Ride. So I guess that's free promotion, I guess.
I guess, yeah. I don't really know. I don't know anything about that. It's not even an album I know that well myself, because it was our last album. I still couldn't tell you the track listing from 1 to 11. It was a moment in time. But I'm really happy with some of the songs on it, and I'm happy that we're playing Black Knight Crash, because that's turning out to be really good.
This wasn't even a proper question, but it was like an anecdote I thought you had to know.
Yeah, that's good.
You guys have been playing. With. Each time I see you guys playing, I seem to notice that you're playing with different guitars. Have you been sticking with any gear or brand?
Different guitars from the first time, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, they are different. So again, part of making the sound bigger was to I understand a lot more than I did then about guitars. You know, when I was 18, 19, we had student grant to eat for a few months when we were students, and I spent mine on a guitar. So that was the first guitar I bought, which I used a lot in Ride. But when I knew this was going to happen last year, I went on a search to find some really great guitar and to spend more money, and I found a 1960s vintage drag, which sounds amazing. I tried lots of them, and that was an amazing one. And then a Rickenbacker 12 string as well. I've got other Rickenbacker 12 strings, but this one is really stable. And so yeah, they were kind of bought for this, and again in mind to be bigger and better sounding than what we had before.
Sure. Are there still tricky scenes and tricky little dreams in your life currently?
Always. Yeah, always. Outside of when you're doing music, in a way you're kind of told you need to be here, you need to do that, so you get out and do that. But life outside is always tricky, yeah, of course. And that's, I mean, I don't think I'm alone there. I have a daughter now, so there's different sorts of tricky things. But yeah, it's always tricky. Yeah.
Just one last thing, like this goes on a podcast I've just launched. It's number 4 in Portugal on iTunes, and it's called Made of Things, and it's based on the assumption that artists have dedicated their lives to playing music or doing whatever art they're doing because they heard something or watched something that made them it acted like a trigger that made them, I need to do this my whole life. Did you have that moment?
Yeah, I did.
What with?
I had sort of 2 or 3 moments like that. One with my uncle, who first played me when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. He first sat me down in front of his big speakers and put on kind of Eddie Cochran loud, and then also he put on Surf's Up, Beach Boys loud. It's the first guy that and Rock Around the Clock. He was into rock and roll, and so he was the first guy to really play me music loud, and it was just like wow, and that's what he wanted to do. But then when I was a teenager, I also went to see like the Damned and the Colts live at the Oxford venue, and even people like Big Country, which is kind of interesting. But Andy went to see the Smiths, which I'm really jealous about. I missed that one. But after I saw those 3 concerts in the new theatre, it's called, in Oxford, I just then thought that one day I'm going to be here with a band that I'm in and play this place. But I never thought I would. I mean, it was just to me a crazy ambition. But it was also around that time I was becoming close friends with Andy at school, and I think we shared maybe the same dreams in that way. And also, we were probably, what brought us together as school friends and all of the band, is that we're all kind of complete music. We're just crazy about music. We love it, and I still am. That doesn't, if anything, even more in a way, because it's sort of it's something. Yeah, music's, that's it for me. It's something that is just incredible. It's a very powerful thing for me, and I feel very blessed that I treat it with respect, because a band can be there one minute and gone the next, and I understand that, like with Ride, is what happened. So I'm even more respectful of that now, and I'm blessed that we can do this again and feel this feeling of kind of voodoo that we have when we play together on stage, and take people on a kind of trip again. It feels really good. Yeah,
it must warm your heart as well.
It does. Yeah, I love it. I mean, and also I don't need to be. When I was younger, I used to be more of a kind of hippie, getting very stoned all the time and all of that, and always a bit like lost in space. I'm more present now. I understand what's going on, and therefore the shows are also better because I'm not always stoned out my head anymore and stuff. So in a way, yeah, I'm feeling it more, because all that stuff used to do when I was in my early 20s was just, I didn't feel it so much, it made me go sideways, but now I feel, because I'm not hiding behind, marijuana and all that stuff. I still smoke now and again, but like not now before I play, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And in a way, the music, so you're finding something more in the music because you're more present. I'm more present now than I used to be. And that means that at times it's sometimes a bit more terrifying, but when it's feeling good, it feels even better. Yeah, so it's good. It's a good feeling.
So it's the moral of the story is don't be afraid of your feelings, right?
Yeah, and just I don't know. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I sing and I represent confusion, and I think I don't have any answers. I'm not like a guy that's going to stand up and say to people, I've got answers in this life. I don't, and it's confusion to me, the life, and I think we're all kind of confused. It's like some people feel they might have got things sussed out, or maybe they have, but I've never felt like that. I think the whole world and people are always, it's confusion, for me, and that's kind of what I sing about in a lot of ways, and what I write about. It's that sort of, it's the things you can't quite work out, and that's to do with, is there a God? I don't believe in God, so there's things like that, there's things like love, there's all that sort of stuff, which is always the things that are not exact sciences, that you can't say, well, that plus that equals that, music is not an exact science, people are complicated, relationships are complicated, the world's complicated, politics are complicated, it's like, so I think there's loads of confusion and complication there to feed into a writing, and in the end, let's just hope that on moments like this, in places like this, you can do something to take people away from the confusion, just to make people understand that we're all kind of confused and vulnerable, in this mad world that we all live in, you know what I mean? Absolutely. Hopefully it's just, if it's a moment of liberation for people, then it's also for me, because I think it's really powerful, it's kind of, that's the power in it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. Alright, that was my talk with Mark Gardner from Ride. We didn't have much time, as you might have guessed, as the guys had a really tight schedule, but you take what you can, right? Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, and subscribe to things more often, because that's what you need in your life. But seriously, if you enjoy the podcast and this episode and all the other episodes, please subscribe on iTunes and follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at Made of Things Pod, and on Facebook as well, Made of Things. And never forget, and I mean never ever ever forget, that you can download all the episodes on WordPress. So guys, see you next week. There actually might be a surprise earlier than next week, so stay tuned, because that's what you do with podcasts.